Hey guys, welcome to Game Informed Family. This is Game Informed Mom, and today we are going to be doing something a little bit different than usual. We are going to take a look at the rising cost of buying a console in today's world. We'll start our journey back in 1985 with the Nintendo Entertainment System and move forward into 2020. A lot of people complain about how expensive it is to be a gamer these days. You pay $300, $400, $500 for a console plus $60 a piece for a game to actually, play your new console. And we're not even going to get into DLC, loot boxes, any of that mess. So the rising cost of gaming, it's not new. It's been going on for years. Or has it? We're going to take a look at the cost of console gaming now versus the cost of console gaming through the last 5 generations of consoles. We're only going to be looking at the price of the console itself, but worry not, I have already started working on the cost of console games. But that is for another time. I would like to say that all prices mentioned in this video are US dollars. These prices are the MSRP of the console at launch and does not include sale prices, special bundles, or third-party sellers. Most of the data, prices, sales numbers, etc., came from Wikipedia and the inflation calculator found in the description of this video. Sorry PC gamers, we are only looking at console prices. PC costs are way too varying to really do this. As much as I would love to, and I did consider it, but there are just way too many variables in buying a gaming rig. So, let's get started with generations 3 and 4. And I have combined generations 3 and 4 because their prices were very, very similar at launch. And there's only 2 consoles from each generation that we're going to be taking a look at. So generations 3 and 4 of gaming were big times for gamers. These are the consoles that a large number of today's gamers remember playing, but not necessarily buying themselves when they were young. You wouldn't believe all of the misinformation out there that I had to wade through just to get the prices for these older consoles. So here's a look at the 3rd and 4th generation of consoles. We've got the Nintendo Entertainment System releasing in 1985 at a launch price of $199.99, which, when adjusted for inflation, is actually $480. You've got the Sega Master System just a year later, launching at the same price. Inflation adjusts that to about $470. The Sega Genesis, just behind that, 3 years at $1989, released at a whole whopping $10 discount over the others, and an inflated rate of just shy of $400. Super Nintendo came on the market in 1991, releasing at the $200 basically standard price at that point, and an inflated rate of about $378. So Generation 4 is considered the true beginning of the console war between Nintendo and Sega, which is what morphed into the console war that we have going on now. So, I'm sorry, I just completely lost my train of thought there for a second. Generation 4 was also when the predecessor to the ESRB, which was created by Sega, the video game Rating Council, was started. This council was created due to the controversy of video game violence. We're looking at you, Mortal Kombat. So gaming consoles are in about that price range now. I mean, $400-$500. But let's keep going through the generations. Let us switch to Generation 5. So Generation 5 ushered gaming into the 32-bit world and pushed us into the beautiful world of 64-bit gaming. Sony burst onto the console gaming scene with their first PlayStation system, overpowering its predators and outselling its contemporaries. CD-ROMs were becoming the go-to for gaming consoles as they were cheaper to produce than the cartridges of old. Nintendo still held on to the old cartridges with the N64. Of note this generation, the Sega Saturn brought us online console gaming. So, I know what you're thinking. Why is the Sega 32X on this chart? Now, the only reason I included the 32X is because it did have its own gaming library separate from the Sega Genesis. And it was a Sega console release. Even though that's a bit of a stretch to call it a console, I thought it appropriate to add it. So it was released in 1994 at a price of $159.99, which is the lowest price that we've seen. And an adjusted price of $278. The Saturn, the same year, released at $400. Were they crazy? $400? That is almost $700 in today's money. Sony PlayStation just a year after at $300, which equates to just over $500. And then the Nintendo 64 in 1996, undercutting the market at $200, which is right around $330 in today's money. The Sega Saturn was an outrageously priced console. I don't know what on earth they were thinking when they priced that system. I mean, come on. But that decision helped Sega just continue right along that path to annihilation in the console wars. The Sega Saturn only sold 9.26 million units. So let's move on to Generation 6. 128-bit gaming, here we come. This is the last generation that the dying Sega released a console, and the first appearance in the console wars for Microsoft. Sega consoles went the way of the dodo after this generation. Of note, though, the Sega Dreamcast sold only 9.13 million units. And the top-selling game on the PlayStation 2 console, which was Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, sold 20.81 million units by August of 2013. It sold more than double the amount of Dreamcast consoles sold. That's crazy. It really is a shame, though, that Sega didn't survive this generation, because I really think that the gaming industry would be a very different place if Sega were still producing consoles. So let's go ahead and pull up the chart. Let's take a look here. The Sega Dreamcast, released in 1999 at a price of $200 in the United States, coming in at just over $300 in 2020 in adjusted price. The PlayStation 2 a year later released at $300, which is just shy of $450 today. The GameCube, which finally switched to a disc, released at $200 in 2001, coming in just shy of $300 in today's money. And the original Xbox the same year at $300, coming in at about $436. This generation of gaming, Generation 6, also brought us further into the world of online console gaming. All 4 entries this generation actually had some online capabilities. So we move into Generation 7. Now, with only 3 entries in Generation 7, we made absolute leaps and bounds in gaming. Sega dropped out and made room for Microsoft. Made a lot of room. So, at this point, we no longer talked about bits. It wasn't 32-bit, 64-bit, it wasn't 128-bit. We talked about graphics, we just looked at the specs of the system, and it no longer mattered how many bits they claimed. They didn't even make claims anymore. So Generation 7 went whole hog into online gaming, though, and integrated the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3 into our everyday lives, trying to make it a home entertainment system instead of just a gaming console. Now, this wasn't our first generation to offer a camera, or in the Xbox 360's case, shove it down our throats for early adopters, but it was the first generation that they actually tried to fully integrate the camera into our gaming. I say tried here because they were overall unsuccessful. Many of the Kinect and Move required games were just bad. And the games that had optional Kinect or Move features seemed to have done it like as an afterthought. It was bad. So let's pull up our chart for Generation 7 and take a look. We've got the Xbox 360 coming out in 2005 for a $400 price tag, with a $400 price tag. Now that comes in at just under $530 in today's money. But then Sony decided to release their PlayStation 3 in 2006 at $599.99, $600, which in today's money is $767. I don't even have words for that. The Wii came out the same year at $250, which brings us to $320 in today's money. So $767 is apparently what we were willing to pay, in adjusted price anyway. Because the PlayStation 3 sold. Although not great at that price. The price did come down relatively quickly, but... So in the background of Generation 7, we also had the format war going on. Microsoft, if you recall, sided with HD DVD, and Sony sided with Blu-ray. We all know who won that war. Now, Generation 8, which is the current generation that we're in, ushered in yet another new era of gaming. The subscription service required for online play. PlayStation Plus and Xbox Live Gold were not new this generation. They existed in Gen 7. But now they are required for online gameplay in most cases. And in the case of Xbox, they're even required for some services, for some online services to function outside of the gaming industry. This generation also saw Game DVR added to the list of capabilities for the systems, which is nice, I guess. And several years into the generation, virtual reality has made another appearance. Yes, another. Some of us remember the Virtual Boy, but that is a conversation for another time. So this generation only had the Wii U, the PlayStation 4, and the Xbox One, releasing at $300, $400, and $500 respectively. I struggled whether or not to include the Nintendo Switch on this list, which released at $300 in 2017. I mean, Nintendo itself called it a hybrid system, but for completion's sake, I decided to go ahead and mention it. The adjusted prices for these consoles is a difference of just $53 for the most expensive console, so it's not really anything all that interesting. But we will go ahead and add it to our most expensive console from each generation list, which lands the Xbox One down there at the bottom. But let's start at the top. Let's look at generations 3 and 4. So we were willing to pay an adjusted price of $480 in 1985 to buy that Nintendo. And then in 1994, just 9 years later, well, we weren't really willing to pay $700. The Sega Saturn didn't sell that well, so we're not even gonna count that as willing to pay it, because yeah, that's what happened to Sega. So the PlayStation 2 in 2000, 15 years after the NES comes out, comes in at $450 in today's money. I mean, that's a lot of money in 2000. But the PlayStation 2, I mean, sold like gangbusters, so they were doing something right. We were evidently willing to pay it. And then the PlayStation 3 comes out just 6 years later at a $600 price point for $767 in adjusted 2020 price. And the Xbox, like I said, is just a $53 difference from its actual price at launch, which you can get that much cheaper now, but I mean, that can be said with all the consoles. Obviously the glaring exceptions to what I'm about to say is the PlayStation 3 and the Sega Saturn. But if you look at those prices, they actually haven't changed that much. They haven't gone up that much. I mean, the difference between the PlayStation 2 and the Xbox One in adjusted 2020 price is only about $100. Which, I mean, I know $100 is a lot of money to a lot of people, and it is to me, but I mean, we make it seem like it's gone up, $500, and it really hasn't. Nintendo only has one console on this list, if you'll notice that, because they always undercut the market. But also there is to the point that typically their consoles are slightly weaker than the other ones, but that's a whole different can of worms that I'm not willing to open right now. So the best-selling console, not just on this list, but the best-selling console is the PlayStation 2, which has sold over 155 million units. And we were willing to pay $300 in 2000 for that console. The most expensive console of its generation, and it has sold more than all of the others. I really think that says something about the PlayStation 2. The worst selling console that we covered, well, it's the 32X. That thing was a dud. It sold 665,000 units by the end of 1994, which was its launch year. It was then discontinued in 1996. So the cost of gaming, I mean, it really isn't as bad as we think it is once you adjust for inflation. I've got one more. Nope, I don't have one more chart. I actually have two things left to look at. Now, this one is a graph. Whoops, wrong button. Sorry about that. This is a graph of the original price. The highest original price of each generation is the blue line, without adjusting for inflation. And the red line at the top is the adjusted inflated price. And then the orange line in the middle is actually the Xbox One launch price adjusted backwards for inflation. Well, and forward to 2020. So, I mean, it's an interesting thing to see. I mean, I think that gaming, the price has gone up, yes, but I don't think that it's gone up as drastically as we like to feel that it has. Now, I really do only have one other chart to show you, and that is this one. This one is interesting. So first, I would like to point out that all wages listed here are the U.S. federal minimum wage rates. Individual states may have had higher wage rates, but for the sake of ease of conversation, we're only using the U.S. federal minimum wage rates, which in 1985 was $3.35. I mean, wow. So from 1985 to 1990, through Generation 3, the minimum wage was $3.35, and it went up in Generation 4 to $4.25. So in order to buy a console at that wage, at the price, you would have to work 61 and a half hours to buy an NES or a Sega Master System. 56.7, so yeah, 57 hours to buy a Genesis, and 47 to buy a Super Nintendo. 1994 and 95, the minimum wage was $4.25. 96, it went up to $4.75. Ooh. So to buy a Sega 32X, that funky little thing, you'd have to work 38 hours to pay for that. The Sega Saturn, a whopping 94 hours. The PlayStation 70, the original PlayStation, 70 and a half hours. The N64, 42 hours. Generation 6 saw another wage increase at $5.15 now. The Dreamcast would cost you about 39 hours. The PlayStation 2, just shy of 60 hours. The GameCube, just shy of 40. And the Xbox, again, just shy of 60, same price as the PlayStation 2. Minimum wage remained $5.15 through the entirety of Generation 7, making an Xbox 360 cost you 77.7 hours. But then the PlayStation 3 was 116 and a half hours. The Wii came in at just 48 and a half hours worked. Generation 8 saw a wage increase to $7.25, which, if I'm not mistaken, is still the minimum wage. I could be wrong on that one, but yeah. So the Wii U, I mean, if you bought a Wii U, man, you had to work 41.4 hours for a system that you didn't even know what it was. The PlayStation 4 would have cost you 55.2 hours, and the Xbox One would come in at 69 hours. So, I just kind of showed this to kind of just show you how much the difference was between, the minimum wage and how long you actually had to work to make that kind of money. And now this is all pre-tax, not only the sales tax, but pre-tax out of your paycheck. So it's not a completely accurate number. It's just kind of a rough way to judge how much skin you've got in the game now versus then when you buy these consoles. So I thought that was interesting. I don't know, maybe you didn't. But, I mean, the games, you know what, let me pull that back up. The games in 1985 to 1990, they would have cost you around a week and a half of work, because the average work week for a full-time employee in the United States is 40 hours a week. So most people, a lot of people get paid every other week. You get about 80 hours of paycheck if you're full-time. So you're talking a whole paycheck for some of these systems. The Xbox 360 was almost a whole paycheck. The PlayStation 3 was a paycheck and a half. I mean, when you kind of look at it like that, it's kind of crazy how much we pay for these consoles. But 61 and a half hours for the NES and 69 for the Xbox One. I mean, considering the upgrade from the NES to the Xbox One, I mean, I think it's a pretty good deal. And I mean, the PlayStation 4 was even cheaper than the NES. And the Sega Genesis. And the Saturn. I mean, look at that. That's crazy. So anyway, I just wanted to share this with you guys. Let me know what you think in the comments. Do you feel like the price of gaming really is going up? Do you feel like maybe this kind of put it in perspective a little bit? Because when I looked at the information, it really kind of put things in perspective for me. But if you enjoyed the video, make sure you hit the like button. If you want to see more content like this, or you like video games and you want to see people play video games, hit the subscribe button. I have already started working on another version of this for the actual game for the consoles, being that Take-Two has announced a $70 price tag for NBA 2K21. I thought that might be some interesting information, and let me tell you, there were some wild pricing structures back in the day for some of these games. But so I've already started working on that, so if you're interested in that, make sure you hit the subscribe button so you know when that comes out. And just thank you very much for watching. I very much appreciate it, and I hope to see you guys again. Have a great day.